Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Mercy of the God of War. Episode 9. The Imperial Princess was staring in another direction, towards two women who were quietly chatting. Cassandra didn't recognize either of them. One of them, judging by her clothes, was a prostitute, while the other woman was distinguishably younger, 14 or 15 years old at the most. The most intriguing thing was the green dress the second one was wearing. To her surprise, Cherienne suddenly rushed to those women who hadn't seen her coming and grabbed the younger girl's wrist. She screamed in fright. When Cassandra arrived at the scene, the prostitute woman had fled the scene, but the girl caught by Cherienne looked petrified. The princess, however, looked like a feline who had just caught her prey. "I wonder what you're doing here, Valeria." Cassandra wondered if she was an imperial servant for Cherienne, but that didn't seem to be right. The girl was shivering from head to toe, holding on to a little glass potion in her hand. She was avoiding Cherienne's eyes, completely terrified. "Who is this?" asked Cassandra, feeling lost. This is one of my younger siblings, Valeria, 25th Imperial Princess. Care to explain what you're doing in this place wearing this outfit, little sister? Like a rabbit caught in a trap, the young Valeria didn't dare move a muscle. It was the first time Cassandra witnessed a member of the imperial family looking this scared. Was it because of Cherienne? She couldn't be one of Carine's children, so who was her concubine mother? A girl her age and her rank definitely had no reason to be there, especially alone and in a servant's outfit. It looked like she had snuck out of the palace in disguise. "Valeria, talk," insisted Cherienne. However, the young woman stayed completely mute and petrified by fear. Annoyed, Cherienne ripped the little bottle out of her hands and passed it to Cassandra. "Aren't you good with plants and potions? What is that?" The girl was on the verge of tears. "Let me go," she begged, trying to pull away from Cherienne's tight grip. Cassandra reluctantly opened the bottle. She didn't like doing this, but if Cherienne was asking she had no choice. A quick little sniff made her grimace. Nausea jolted to her stomach, causing her to almost drop it. Dahlia immediately took it from her. Just like Cassandra, she sniffed it and then applied a bit to her pinky to get a little taste. "Dahlia, don't. It could be poisoned," said Cassandra, worried. "It is fine, my lady. I have been trained to identify poisons. This is no such thing. I can taste green orchid, pudding grass, nutmeg, sea squill, twin-leaved gamophilia." The more she listed, the paler Cassandra became, understanding what the vial contained. Cherienne noticed. "Cassandra, what is it?" The young concubine exchanged a look with the servant, who nodded, confirming her thoughts. "It's an abortifacient. A potion used to induce a miscarriage." Instinctively, Cassandra put a hand on her belly and lost all compassion for the young princess, who was clearly terrified. Her dark eyes went from Cassandra's tummy to Cherienne, growing wider and wider. "No, no, no. Sister Cherienne, I swear this wasn't meant for the concubine. I swear. I would never dare to try to harm my brother's offspring." "Is that it, Valeria?" said Cherienne with a menacing tone, raising her wrist higher. The young girl cried out in pain. Sherian was taller than her. The difference in strength was showcased by the calm and effortless way she hung her younger sister by her wrist. "Spill it, Valeria. Who is that meant for, you little swine?" The young princess obviously couldn't bring herself to say it. Her expression was tortured between pain and frustration, but Sherian was not going to let go until she heard what she wanted. I swear it wasn't for her," she cried repeatedly. "For who, then? Talk, we don't have all day." "Sherian," whispered Cassandra, feeling a bit uncomfortable with the situation. "Maybe we should." "No, she will say it, now. Even if she doesn't know who it was destined for, she has to know who asked her for it. Dressing up as a servant, leaving without an escort, and trying to evade me, too. You know how short my patience is, Valeria, and I don't think father would mind much if I lost my temper with you." The threat was ice cold. Even Cassandra felt a chill. Was Valeria the daughter of a lower concubine of the emperor? She probably didn't have any of the brothers' backing, from Sherian's words. However, she was only 15 and defenseless like this. Cassandra sighed. She truly believed this potion wasn't made for her. Valeria looked like she would have been much more terrified if Sherian had seen through her right away. "Is it for one of the concubines?" asked Cassandra. "One of the princes, or perhaps one of His Highness' women?" Valeria turned her eyes to her, looking a bit surprised by the sudden questioning, but seeing her lack of response, Cassandra was pretty sure neither of those were right. Then there was only one option remaining. "Is it for one of the princesses?" This time, Valeria went from red to white in a matter of seconds. Sherian saw it too, and smirked. "So that's what it is. One of our dearest sisters ordered you to get this. Now I'm wondering which one of those was enough to get pregnant." To Cassandra's surprise, she let go of Valeria right after those words. The young princess didn't wait and ran away in a hurry. Cassandra turned to Sherian, confused. "Is that it? Aren't you going to ask her which one? There are only a few who could get that child so scared." If it was the daughter of a low-ranked concubine, Valeria would have spilled the beans as soon as I caught her. She is an only child and her mother is of no importance now. Whichever princess ordered her to get this potion is at least as scary as I am, and there aren't many that can claim that title. Cassandra finally understood. Though they were all seemingly sisters, not all princesses had the same status or power. Sherian, for example, was backed up by a favored mother and brother. Phaedra also had a rather comfortable position thanks to her imperial brother, Vrihan. However, not all princesses had the same luck. Unless they had a brother or a mother favored by the emperor, they were probably just pawns for the others to use. Valeria was probably among the unlucky ones, fighting for her own survival just like many others. Who could be pulling her strings then? Cassandra had an idea, but she wasn't sure. Which princess would want an abortion potion, she wondered out loud. "Don't know. But we are not supposed to engage in a relations until our father marries us off." Cassandra turned to Sherian, surprised. She knew it was a rather basic rule for daughters in the Dragon Empire, but somehow, this brought out a completely different side of Sherian she had never thought about. "Does that mean you are married?" Me? Asked Sherian with a snarl. Oh, no. But Cassandra still vividly remembered some scenes the princess was involved in that she would rather forget. She even blushed just thinking about it. Sherian smirked. Oh Cassandra, I may be a virgin, but it doesn't mean I can't play, right? This sentence would stay for a long time in the young concubine's mind before she put together what it meant, rearranging her whole outlook on Sherian. She shook her head trying to forget about it for now and turned to Dahlia, pointing at the little potion still in the servant's hands. Do you think she only came here for this? I would believe so. No princess would want to be seen here buying an abortion potion. Father would be furious. Cassandra nodded, taking the potion from her. She considered holding on to this until they found the culprit. Maybe she could even find a clue. All right, said Sherian. I've had enough, let's go grab your feisty sister before I really lose my patience. The three women agreed to go check the next brothel, but once again, Cassandra was left disheartened. Miss Andra had come and gone from this place as well. This time, however, things appeared to be a bit different, as the young eunuch explained. Me tricked some local thugs into losing a lot of money, and they didn't appreciate that. They came often to harass this brothel, so the owner decided to kick her out. She didn't realize until after that me had stolen her money too. I don't know where she is now though, this came to light about 8 or 9 months ago. She could be anywhere, but I'd be willing to bet she didn't stay in the Red District. Too many people were unhappy with her, and I know there's a group of thugs still actively looking for her. To be honest with you, I wouldn't even be surprised if she left the capital, Your Highness. Cassandra repressed the urge to cry. How could her younger sister get into so much trouble? She should only be 16 by now. Did Miss Andra grow to be such a mischievous girl from her upbringing in the Red District? The worst part for Cassandra was to think that after all this time, the two women had been in the same city. Though the capital was extremely vast, they could have crossed paths if Cassandra had ventured closer to this area, or if Miss Andra had been near one of her old master's properties. Well, said Sherian. I guess that's all for today. At least we know this troublemaker sister of yours was still alive and well a few months ago. She could be literally anywhere now, though. I can still ask around, there are a few places Miss Andra could have tried to go. Cassandra was already thinking about where to search for her next. After everything she had discovered today, she couldn't give up. She felt closer to Miss Andra than she had been in years. Tomorrow, pretty face, said the princess with a frown. The sun is close to setting, and my brother will make a fuss if I don't bring you back before night falls. Especially considering where we spent our day. Cassandra blushed. Indeed, a lot more establishments were open now, as the brothels and their tenants were preparing to work. More customers were filling the streets too, though they kept a careful distance from the three women. They probably wondered what this odd trio was doing here. Come on, let's go. As they started walking back, Cassandra couldn't help but glance sideways, just in case she might spot Miss Andra. It was a bit desperate, but she just couldn't stop scanning the people around them. Even though Sherian noticed her slower pace, she didn't bother mentioning it, and continued to walk her back to the entrance. You! An angry voice came from behind them, but for the first few seconds, neither Sherian or Cassandra realized his shouts were directed at them. When they noticed the people eyeing them, however, they turned around. Charging their way was a large man with a shaved head, and too many tattoos on his face to actually distinguish his traits from other men. He was quite horrendous to look at, but Cassandra had a good guess who the man was anyway. In the capital, criminals were marked, their wrongdoings tattooed in visible places for others to see. Most people would want to avoid those markings, so they weren't outcast by society. However, local thugs, like this man, displayed them proudly, as if it was proof of their strength. And he surely had a lot. "Do you think you can hide from us? And use this kind of disguise, too? You'll see." Sherian and Cassandra exchanged looks, completely unsure about what was going on. It was Dahlia who understood first and stepped in between the man and the young concubine. "I think you are mistaken, sir. My lady is not the one you seek." "Are you kidding me? She is the one I've been looking for. You'd better give me my money back or you'll take a good beating for stealing from me." Cassandra was speechless. Was that man mistaking her for her sister? Were they really so alike that someone would actually confuse them? A group of men were now gathering behind him. Only a few had less tattoos than the first, but all had quite the same horrible faces. Sherian sighed, swinging her swords hesitantly. "Cassie, do you mind if I play a bit? I need the exercise and I have some frustration to release." While Cassandra had a generous soul, she really didn't care much for criminals. That man's crimes were visible all over his skin. She was well aware that this sort of person would demonstrate horrible behaviors towards women like her. Keeping that in mind, she nodded and crossed her arms. "All right, gentlemen, let's play," declared Sherian enthusiastically. Cassandra turned around and saw they were only a few steps away from the entrance. Even while the princess was happily dueling with all the men present, Cassandra knew she wouldn't be able to handle them all, especially since they were attempting to corner the trio. Dahlia had taken out a little dagger, but it wouldn't do much against the sabers the criminals had. The young concubine took 2 fingers to her mouth and whistled. After a few seconds, a large figure shadowed them. The thugs looked up, their faces turning white as a sheet. "Cassandra! Why are you spoiling my fun? I am tired. And besides, this is not a playground. I want to go back, my lord will be expecting me." Cray landed next to her, growling immediately like a big cat would purr. A paw was squishing a man on the ground with a gruesome sound and a long scream, but the dragon didn't seem to hear it. Instead, it was more curious about the men running around in utter fear. Cray gobbled one up, as if trying some new treat out of sheer curiosity. Meanwhile, Cassandra was climbing on its back, leaving Sherian to her little game. Another thug tried to throw his saber at Cassandra, but the dragon sent it flying away with a quick flap of its wing. Unfortunately for the man, his weapon came right back to him, stabbing through him, painfully. "Fine, you party wrecker, just go!" Sherian yelled. "But take that lizard with you before he eats them all." Cray must have easily been able to sense where its master was because the dragon flew right back to the palace without any instruction from Cassandra. She was still a bit afraid of flying, but she was also realizing how nice it was. One thing she'd never get tired of was the view of the capital from above. She still hoped they'd go back to the north soon, though. She missed the quiet onyx castle and her friends. The capital was too hot and humid. The dragon landed with a loud growl in one of the big courts of the palace, a square-shaped area made completely of stone. Karen was waiting there, his eyes set on the young concubine as they arrived. He held out his arms, and Cassandra slid easily along the dragon's scales until he grabbed her. She smiled and kissed him softly. Karen took a step back, still holding her, to pull her off his dragon. He seemed a bit concerned. "Did you find anything?" he asked. "A bit, yes, but we still haven't found her," Cassandra sighed. "You look tired." She chuckled, putting her arms around his neck. "My lord, you keep saying that these days. You really do look tired." "Fine, I'm hungry, actually. We didn't even eat." Karen stayed quiet for a little while, with his eyes so intently on her, he had Cassandra a bit confused. What was her prince thinking about now? After a minute though, he seemed to decide on something and nodded. "I have something for you." "A present." "A present?" she repeated, intrigued. Karen had already gifted her lots of dresses and jewelry. Well, more like his father or mother had, but still. What else could she be getting now? Something for their baby, perhaps? But Cassandra wasn't planning on raising the child here. He turned around and carried her through the palace. Even if she had no idea where they were going, Cassandra was patient enough not to ask. She enjoyed the little ride, caressing her prince's hairline and telling him about everything she and Cherian had learned. He didn't react or say much, even to the part where they had encountered his half-sister, but Cassandra didn't expect him to anyway. After a bit more walking, he finally let her down in front of a large door she had never seen before, but by the looks of it, it was a brand new one. The redwood stood out from the stone walls, and there weren't many windows nearby. However, they were definitely near Karen's apartments, making her think it was within his private area of the palace. "This is yours from now on," he said. He was handing her a key, with a complex shape and a unique redwood handle. Cassandra took it with a shy smile, even more intrigued now. She then turned to slowly open the door, her heart rate accelerating. She didn't expect what was behind the door and was rendered speechless in the doorway. Green, green everywhere. Green leaves, herbs, and plants as far as her eyes could see. Cassandra took a few steps in, unable to close her mouth. There were 4 long tables with hundreds of different herbs on them in different colored pots. Under her feet was fresh grass. There were several patches of herbs and flowers growing here and there, in delimited areas. For a second, she had thought it was a greenhouse, but it didn't exactly have a roof. Instead, above her head was a large pergola with ivy and other climbing, trailing plants covering most of the framework. The sun could still pass through, but the whole place was more fresh than what Cassandra usually experienced in the palace. The main reasons were the little fountains and rivers artificially planted that ran from one side to the other, refreshing the whole area. Actually, those fountains even had some flowers in them. "Water lilies," she whispered with a smile. "Do you like it?" She turned to her prince, baffled. "You're giving me a garden?" Karen nodded. Since you don't care for gold, dresses, or jewelry. So, he had thought about something that would make her happy and gifted her a whole herbal garden? Cassandra was amazed. She had never thought that Karen would be able to put up such a thing. And in such a short amount of time. She became teary just thinking about it. She turned around and walked back to him, throwing herself into his arms. I love it, I love you. Thank you. Karen hugged her back and kissed her cheek. He felt like it had been a long time since he had openly displayed a genuine smile like this. Cassandra chuckled and turned her head in search of his lips to kiss him, a long, sweet, and grateful kiss. He was relieved to see her happier, after her sour day and how she had been sick earlier. Cassandra kept her lips going, enjoying the proximity between them, but Karen pulled away with an annoyed groan. What is it? She asked, a bit surprised. He sighed. If we keep going, I'll want to have relation with you. Here and now. Cassandra blushed, the red spreading to her ears, so she looked down. Oh, indeed, it was better if they stopped now. She might have been teasing him a bit too much without knowing. She laughed at the prince's hungry expression and stepped back innocently, turning around to explore her new herbal garden. She truly loved this place. It was green and cold enough to have her forget the palace's climate that she couldn't seem to get accustomed to. Everywhere she looked she found new and familiar herbs, dozens of them. Almost every medicinal herb or plant known in this empire was gathered here for her to play with. She hadn't noticed it right away, but at the very end of that garden was actually a wide desk with parchments about medicine, ink, and blank paper for her personal use. Whoever had prepared it had also put dozens of pots, pitchers, mortars, pestles, scales and weights, jars, and show globes. Cassandra could spend hours studying everything here. While she was still observing everything in awe, Karen came up from behind, gently hugging her with his hands on her tummy, and kissed her temple. So you like it, he simply said. I love it, really. Were you trying to cheer me up? She hadn't been happy since they came to the palace, and they both knew that. For the usually aloof man to actually go out of his way and prepare all this for her, it melted her heart. Cassandra smiled and grabbed his face to kiss him more passionately, making him groan. Cassandra, if you keep going. How far are we from your bedroom? His brain snapped at her words. Everything that happened next was too fast for her to focus. She was brought back to his bedroom not even a minute later and laid gently on the bed, her dress quickly lifted above her waist, making her breathe loudly in response. The prince didn't lose any time. Cassandra cried out when he slid in, biting her lips and shivering. A hot chill spread through her skin, as he began thrusting, fast and hard. She didn't want to hold back and moaned as loudly as she needed, her heart thumping. Holding on to him, she let him set the pace. Cassandra held on to his neck and closed her eyes, focusing on the sensations. His movements were so wild, he only focused on kissing her skin when it came close to his lips and kept moving, restlessly. The young concubine was running out of breath, crying out louder, struggling to keep up with him. Karen couldn't hold back for long, however, his rut reaching its edge after a few more minutes, releasing himself, moaning. Cassandra curved her body into him, releasing a long sigh of pleasure. The young concubine was exhausted after that very short but intense love-making session. She kept her eyes shut for a bit longer, as her breathing and heartbeat slowly calmed down. Karen tenderly sprinkled light kisses all over her smooth skin, allowing her time to recover. They were still embracing one another, and Cassandra didn't want to let go of him, not yet. "Rest here for a bit." "I don't want to, it's still early," she protested. "You're tired." "I'm fine." He was about to say something, but all of a sudden, he froze. His reaction had Cassandra on alert too. She sat up, now completely awake, looking for what had caught his attention. She heard it a few seconds later. Someone's screams were coming from outside. Karen got on his feet and put his pants back on before leaving the room in a hurry. Cassandra followed right after him as soon as she could, worried. To their surprise, at one end of the corridor Sherian was dragging one of the men from earlier. While she looked fine, her clothes were sullied by a terrifying amount of blood. The man she was dragging was bloodied and soiled as well. "Ah, there you are!" she exclaimed. "Look, I kept one for you." "Ask him." Cassandra didn't approach, as the smell would definitely make her sick. She stayed a couple of steps behind Karen. "Who is that?" Karen questioned. "One of the men who tried to attack us earlier," said Sherian. "They mistook your woman for her sister. Apparently, she owes them money." "You were attacked," he growled, glaring at the man and taking out his sword. His sister rolled her eyes. "I said they tried, brother. Cray took her away and I played a bit, but they weren't much fun. They all died a painful death, except this one. I kept the chief alive for Cassie to interrogate." Saying she kept him alive was an odd way of putting it. It would have been more believable if the man didn't have a scary trail of blood behind him, an eye missing and several of his fingers cut off. Even for Cassandra, who was used to injuries, he was a horrible sight to see. She was getting a bit annoyed at Sherian and her games. Cassandra put her irritation aside. "What do you know about my younger sister, me?" she asked. "She took my money." "She, Gaia." Unfortunately, Cassandra didn't look away fast enough. A couple of fingers flew off, and the man screamed in pain while Sherian clicked her tongue. "What did I tell you? Watch your language. Next time I hear you use that word to disrespect any woman, I'm cutting off your 11th finger, if you know what I mean." It took a few seconds for the man to calm down and for Cassandra to recompose herself. She knew Sherian was not patient or forgiving, but still. "My sister," she repeated. That woman stole our money. We gambled and she cheated us. She took thousands from us. We tried to have her pay it back, but she was gone. We only heard about her being in the main street 3 months ago, but we couldn't find her. So we were looking in the Red District, in case she came back." Cassandra sighed. At least she knew me was still around within the last 3 months. If she hadn't left before then, she probably had found a way to stay without them finding her. How did she do it, though? The capital was so vast, if she moved to another part of the city, it would be hard to find her. Did she find a new place with the money she had gotten? If it was Cassandra, she would have hidden from those thugs by relocating to one of the upper areas, where the nobles and rich lived. What does she look like? Inquired Cassandra. That woman me is, a lot like you, but, prettier and more curvy. Cassandra couldn't help but roll her eyes. The man's choice of words were really crude. Did she ever mention anything? My sister. I don't know. She was good with herbs, she always bought a lot. She made potions for the prostitutes. Her husband sold a lot too. Cassandra stilled suddenly. What? Her husband? Yet. She got married last year to a rich merchant's son. He's dead, though. It didn't make any sense. If Miss Andra was still working in the Red District then, how did she get married? Cassandra was beyond confused. What was his name? I don't know. She said he died of an illness or whatever months ago. Cassandra sighed. She wouldn't learn any more from this man. She even doubted if half of what he said was even true. She shook her head when Karen sent her a questioning gaze, meaning she was done with him. Scram, said Sherian. What? I said beat it before I put my sword up you. You're lucky we have a pregnant woman here. The man spat blood in Cassandra's way. Your wretched sister better pay me back my money, or I'll find her and… His head rolled before he finished his sentence. Cassandra turned away, disgusted. Even Sherian sighed. Really, brother? I have to pick up the trash after you now. You couldn't have waited for him to go and die outside, seriously. Cassandra took deep breaths, closing her eyes and focusing on the soothing smell around her. Dahlia gently rubbed her back and helped her relax a bit. Does this make you feel better? Asked Karen, standing off to the side. She nodded. With Dahlia's help, Cassandra had concocted a solution of lemon and verbena, and was now inhaling it from a little basin. The vapors were helping to greatly reduce her nausea. She had vomited again after the beheading. It was too much for her eyes and stomach to handle. A group of servants were cleaning the area, while Cassandra had been accompanied back to her herbal garden, where she could bask in some fresh air. I really don't ever want to have children, sighed Sherian, who was watching reluctantly next to her brother. Shall I call mother? I'm fine, said Cassandra. I already feel a lot better. She may have to keep more of that solution close by from now on. She didn't imagine it would be so effective. I will go and buy more lemons later, said Dahlia. Cassandra nodded, grateful. She could always grow more verbena here, even a whole lemon tree. Let's skip the banquet, said Karen. Again? Brother, father will really throw a fit. And it's the last evening before the New Year celebrations. I don't care. Sherian didn't add anything as her brother already had his usual glare on. Cassandra also wished the celebrations were over already, so they could finally leave the palace. However, she still hadn't forgotten the matter of the snake. She glanced at her fingers, which were mostly clear of any blue tint now. No, we should go, she said with determination. I want to find out who was behind that snake. You think you'll know tonight already? Asked Sherian, interested. Cassandra nodded and stood up, walking back to Karen. Can we take a bath before we go? Of course, he quickly agreed, and Sherianne decided she would need one too, in her own apartments of course. Dahlia, who had naturally taken the lead of the servants preparing the bath, also made sure to include verbena and a bit of lemon for the water, which helped Cassandra relax even more efficiently. For once, Karen let her bathe alone, staying by her side once he had dismissed everyone with an efficient glare. "Those make you feel better?" he asked, looking at the plant of verbena Cassandra had brought from the garden. She nodded. "I've always liked this scent. They grew in the south too, but it was probably a different species. The ones I remember were blue and purple, not white like those. I think the smell was stronger, too. We can get more if you need them." Cassandra chuckled. She knew her prince would gather all the verbena in the country for her if she asked him to. It would be a bit extreme though. She shook her head, getting out of the bath with his help. "No need," she said while giving him a peck on the lips. The demonstrations of affection between them were now so natural and regular, Cassandra barely blushed anymore. Karen always watched her every move. His presence had become something she was used to and she craved it when he wasn't near. Once again she repeated the usual process of picking out a dress and some jewelry. She even put some flowers in her hair, as she couldn't stand the perfumes brought by the servants. She had never liked those overbearing, heavy scents from the Empire's beauty products to begin with, but now with her pregnancy, her sense of smell was even more hypersensitive. It didn't lessen her beauty at all, though. The white flowers she had picked from her garden suited her adorably, giving her an even purer appearance than usual. Cassandra got a few whispers when she entered the imperial hall from giggling concubines who made fun of her hair decorations, whispering about how her prince must be unwilling to spoil her. But Cassandra didn't really mind. She probably would stop hearing such things once the news about her herbal garden spread. Karen was glaring around, making sure any concubine or princess that dared to make eye contact would instantly be silenced. Compared to his gentle and innocent concubine, the war god was still as scary and impressive as ever for anyone else. They took their seats, once again, Cassandra on Karen's lap. No one seemed to react to that anymore, though some concubines were red-faced and green with envy. Sherianne sat next to them, sinking comfortably back into her chair. "So? How do you intend to find her?" she asked. Cassandra smiled, taking a look around. After carefully observing the various concubines, she only had one suspect. The woman in red, the second one from the left, at the second prince's feet. Sherianne looked over, lost in thought, trying to remember. "That's Vrihan's newest concubine. She's a soldier's daughter, I think. I can't remember her name." "Why do you think it's her? Are you sure?" Cassandra slowly nodded, but remained silent because of the Emperor's entrance. He took his place on the golden throne, looking a bit unhappy. Cassandra wondered if something had happened, but the Emperor simply sat and ordered for the usual festivities to begin. As she was quite hungry, Cassandra began eating while watching the dancers' performance. She wasn't paying attention to them, though. Truth was, her main focus was on the second prince's concubine. After a while, Sherianne leaned closer to her. "Cassie, spill it. How are you so sure? Look at the dark circles under her eyes," whispered Cassandra. "She hasn't been sleeping well, Or perhaps, not at all. After hearing what I said that day, anyone who had been in contact with the snake would have been too worried to sleep. Because they would believe you? Sherian questioned doubtfully. Even if they didn't, all I needed was to plant a little seed of doubt. With my blue fingers, she probably couldn't help but wonder endlessly if it was real or not, if she could actually die in her sleep. That seed of doubt would make it hard for her to sleep properly. Unable to rest properly, she would feel more and more tired. And in turn, make her wonder even more if the symptoms were all tied together. Sherian remained speechless. Cassandra's plan was to have the culprit tire herself out and show signs of fatigue? The princess couldn't help but be a bit skeptical. Don't you think that's a bit light? Look at her hands, whispered Cassandra. Indeed, something looked wrong with the young concubine's hands. They couldn't possibly have turned blue, that was obviously something Cassandra had made up. Actually, they looked red and dry. What did that little? She's washed them too much, explained Cassandra. She saw my blue-tinted hands and her natural reaction was to try and wash off as much as she could, thinking scrubbing would make whatever she had got on them disappear without the need for an antidote. Sherian was impressed. Just a few words from Cassandra had made such a mess in that woman's mind. Not that their second brother's concubines were considered smart at all, but still. You had predicted all that. I didn't think she would ruin the skin on her hands, but I was hoping to see the lack of sleep after a couple of days. Nevertheless, it was impressive. Cassandra's days of treating patients, and dealing with dumb and entitled concubines had left her with some unexpected skills. A large part of it was due to the lack of acceptable education available to the people, particularly anything in terms of studying medicine. A strong and educated woman like Karine was a rarity inside the palace. The majority of concubines were chosen based on looks, and were not particularly smart to begin with. Cassandra had hoped it would also be the case of the culprit, who had obviously sent the snake in without really thinking of the consequences. One of Rihan's concubines, of course, whispered Sherian. She was glaring towards the second brother, but he didn't even notice. He was completely absorbed in a heated discussion with his sister, Phaedra. Cassandra wondered if he was behind this. The feud between those siblings and Karen wasn't to be taken lightly, not if she wanted to survive. Her prince too, had his dark eyes sending daggers their way, all the while holding tightly to Cassandra. How are you going to deal with her now? Questioned Sherian with a smirk. Cassandra had no idea. She would have let her prince deal with it, but if that woman was only a pawn, she didn't really deserve death. I heard Sister Sherian had an interesting outing with Brother Karen's concubine today, gossiped Phaedra from across the hall. Immediately, everyone else stopped talking. That woman's voice alone was enough to make Cassandra's skin crawl. What was she up to now? Her eyes were glancing innocently at Sherian. However, the princess had an amused smirk, like a cat prepared to play with her prey. You should watch your concubine more carefully, brother. She seems to carelessly wander outside the palace. What are you talking about, Princess Phaedra? Asked one of the concubines. That woman was a poor actress. She had an obvious smile, and Cassandra could tell she was only too happy to play in Phaedra's little games. Cassandra stayed expressionless, but she could feel Karen's fingers were restless along her back. Despite his solemn expression, she could tell her prince was annoyed, too. "You are well informed, Princess Phaedra," replied Cassandra. "I wonder why my outings with Princess Sherian are of any importance to you." Phaedra's face turned sour. One could tell she didn't expect Cassandra to reply back to her, and was annoyed about that. Her expression was torn between anger and disgust. "I suppose you're right, it shouldn't be too surprising to see you two hanging around the houses." The insult was so clear, even the emperor slammed his hand on his throne. "Phaedra! Watch your words, daughter! Or else you will really anger me." "There is nothing upsetting about this, dear father," dismissed Sherian, turning to her sister. "After all, you knew that place long before we did, didn't you, Phaedra? I bet it reminds you of your dear mother." Cassandra didn't expect this. Their mother was a prostitute? Phaedra turned red in anger, standing up suddenly. Next to her, the second prince, Vrihan, narrowed his eyes on her. "Phaedra, sit. What is the meaning of this?" The emperor roared, clearly annoyed. "If you have things to say, Phaedra, speak now or shut up." "My apologies, father. But I was upset because of Sherian's misconduct today." "Were you aware she abused our younger sister?" For a few seconds, the emperor seemed confused. "Your younger sister," he repeated. "Valeria, father. She mistreated Valeria." Sherian laughed loudly, and even Cassandra felt their situation pitiful. The emperor had so many daughters, he couldn't even grasp who Phaedra was talking about right away, even after her name was given. He probably didn't care much for the younger princesses. "Oh right, Valeria. What about her?" Phaedra was obviously annoyed that their father didn't care much about the situation. She clicked her tongue, irritated. As if she had been called, Valeria emerged from the shadows behind Phaedra. The young princess was clearly uncomfortable being there, appearing in front of them on the verge of tears. But Phaedra pushed her forward anyway without a care. "See?" Sherian grabbed her arm so violently. "Is it fine for her to abuse her younger sisters? Don't you hate us fighting, father?" Cassandra noticed the bandage on Valeria's arm and shook her head. This was clearly too much of an exaggeration. She had been there, she knew that despite Sherian's tight grip on her sister's arm, she certainly didn't use enough force to require those ridiculous bandages or even any medicine. Did Phaedra have her put it on just for show? This was absurd. "Aren't you going to say anything in her defense, father?" insisted Phaedra. "Well," sighed the emperor. "Are you done, Phaedra?" growled Sherian, annoyed. "That child isn't even injured. Look at this. Does she seem fine to you?" Cassandra stood up unexpectedly, all eyes on her. She had enough of Phaedra's petty game, trying to make such a performance, even using her younger sister like this. "Take off her bandage, then." "Excuse me. Take off her bandage. I am the imperial physician, I will be able to tell if she is injured or not." Phaedra was about to protest, but a glare from the emperor kept her quiet. Cassandra was appointed imperial physician by the emperor himself, she had every right to make use of that title. After a few seconds of hesitation, Phaedra put on a smirk. I'm sorry, unfortunately she cannot. The imperial doctor who already saw her warned that the bandages cannot be removed for 2 weeks, or else she will scar. Cassandra sighed. This woman was so stubborn. One could tell everyone in the Great Hall was waiting to see who would have the last word between the war god's favorite and an imperial princess. The tension was palpable. Some of the women were excited to see how this would turn out. Princess Phaedra had a triumphant smile on already. Whereas Cassandra, no matter how favored by the prince or emperor she was, couldn't disobey her. Is that so? Those 3 simple words from Cassandra took everyone by surprise. Her voice was too calm. While Phaedra was still dumbfounded, the young concubine stepped away from her prince's knee and walked down their way, seemingly unafraid. Everyone watched her cross the hall without saying a word. Had that woman gone crazy? However, Cassandra was walking very calmly and without an ounce of fear in her eyes. Maybe her baby was giving her some unexpected strength, but she couldn't stand being afraid of those people anymore. The fire of a dragon was glowing in her eyes. She arrived in front of Phaedra and her younger sister Valeria. While not giving one look at the first, she seemingly bowed to the other. After a few seconds of that strange posture, she got back up, turning to Phaedra. The princess didn't even bother to hide her annoyance. "What are you doing? I forbid you from touching her." "I do not need to touch her," Cassandra retorted. "This bandage doesn't even smell like medicine. It doesn't smell like anything." A silence followed her words, and Phaedra went paler and paler as everyone present slowly understood. Medicine in the Dragon Empire always smelled strong, and most of the time, horribly so. It was usually made of greasy and thick bombs that would smell even worse, had they been kept under bandages like the one on Valeria's arm. However, from what the young concubine had said, it was obvious. While faking Valeria's injury under such bandages, they hadn't even bothered to apply any kind of balm underneath, and anyone could tell with a sniff. Even the second prince's dragon behind them, that was usually so moody for nothing, was resting in its cage, unbothered. The creature certainly wouldn't have stayed put with the smell of the medicine so close. Cassandra stared right into Phaedra's dark eyes for a few seconds, not showing an ounce of fear, and turned back before her enemy could even reply. You. But nothing came out of the princess' lips, and Cassandra calmly walked back to her prince. Karen had a terrifying smirk, much like Sherian's. As his concubine joined him and sat on his lap again, his eyes didn't leave Phaedra for 1 second. Meanwhile, the emperor slammed the golden throne again, and this time, his golden dragon behind him growled loudly, as if to show his master's anger. "Phaedra, what is this? Valeria, take off that bandage. Right now." The princess was completely white, as was her younger sister. Slowly, trembling hands took off the bandage, revealing a perfectly fine arm. Karen slowly kissed Cassandra's shoulder, proud of his young concubine. His sister, too, was exulting. "Look at this, father! My sisters work so hard at insulting and framing me, don't they? Father, I can explain. Valeria came to me crying. I only wanted to get justice for." Phaedra kept trying to justify her lie, miserably. Cassandra frowned. That woman was really too disgusting. She was in such a hurry to throw her younger sister in the death pit when she was obviously the one behind all this. Even worse, the second prince completely ignored them, as if this whole situation wasn't his concern. He wasn't any better than Phaedra. Cassandra exchanged a look with her prince, but Karen remained silent, continuously caressing her back and hair, his dark eyes still fixated on Phaedra with a murderous glare. "Silence!" yelled the emperor, followed by his dragon's furious growl. "I shall not hear any more. Valeria, you'll be punished by Sherian for framing her and lying. I don't care what it is. And you, Phaedra, I will personally deal with you later. Now you better sit down and shut up until this banquet is over. I don't want to see either of you at the New Year's celebrations, either." Despite everything said, Cassandra felt unsatisfied. Phaedra was obviously devastated, but Cassandra found that the punishment was way too light for her. Seeing her clenched fists, Sherian gestured for her to ignore it. "She is our second brother's favorite sister," she whispered. "Father will never punish her too harshly, unless she really pushes it." Once again, the importance of the siblings' bonds was showing. Even if he remained silent all along, Phaedra's status was protected by her closeness to her brother, the second Prince Reuniting. Cassandra felt it was very unfair for the poor Valeria. "At least," said Sherian, "now I will be able to interrogate that little swine." She had her feline eyes set on Valeria. Cassandra suddenly remembered the issue of the abortion potion was left hanging, too. Was Phaedra really behind this? And more importantly, who was pregnant? Wouldn't the emperor know if one of them were pregnant? The princesses don't have dragon children, only the princes can transmit the dragon's blood to their children. Does the emperor make it public if an egg appears? Generally, no. Father doesn't check the vault every day. Claude sometimes guards it, but if another dragon goes in and comes out with an egg, we know something is up. However, not all eggs are taken out. Why? Sherian sneered. Shouldn't you know best? Remember how the dragons know their master's feelings before they even realize them. Cassandra took a few minutes to think about that. If what Sherian said was right, then dragons didn't systematically claim their offspring unless they wanted them. She looked around at all the princes and concubines. Some of the princes probably didn't care much once they had enough concubines and a few sons. "Which of your brothers have children?" she whispered. "Sephir, Reuniting, and Lephis," said Karen. "Sephir has one son and 2 daughters," added Sherian. "Reuniting has 2 sons and 6 daughters, another on the way. And Lephis has 4 sons and 8 or 9 daughters. But 3 of his women are pregnant." Cassandra sighed. She had forgotten the 5th prince was notorious for his many concubines. Indeed, he was always surrounded by young and beautiful concubines to fool around with. If the rumor about him having over 200 concubines was true, it was surprising that he hadn't fathered more children. Despite his many heirs, he didn't seem to have much interest in the Golden Throne, though. "What of the 4th and 6th prince?" Cassandra asked. "Anur is too young, he only has 1 concubine for now. And Ophius, he has a wife, but she hasn't given him a child yet. I don't think he's very interested, either. His mother is the one pressuring him. It seemed to be true. The fifth prince was happily chatting with one of his women, but the others looked bored and unwilling to be here. In comparison, Vrihan's women seemed desperate for their prince's attention. Cassandra felt grateful she wasn't like those women. Karen only had eyes for her, and Cray had cared for their egg as soon as it appeared, although he had let Karine take it. She turned to her prince, lovingly kissing him, and for once, surprising Karen by doing so. Her boldness in front of so many people was unusual. Many eyes saw the scene, and some concubines were dying of jealousy. There were a few too many glares. Karen glared right back at them and, as if responding to his master, Cray suddenly appeared a few seconds later, flying down from the open roof with a warning growl. The dragon was at least as persuasive as its master, and soon no one dared to look their way. The only person to be overjoyed with the dragon's presence was the emperor, as if there weren't already two of his other sons' dragons there, resting in their cages behind their owners. Look at him! This beautiful beast! Cray didn't seem to care much for flattery, and as usual, crouched down next to Cassandra, head next to Karen's knee, making sure to be where the young concubine's fingers could find it. Once again, they attracted much attention. Some women were sweating to see how many fingers she was going to lose, while the others were even more jealous of her confidence, glaring at the other dragons as if they were untamed wild beasts. "Pretty white lily, tell me, did you enjoy your present?" suddenly asked the emperor. "Your Highness, you know about it." "Of course I know. My son steals one of the palace's wings and destroys it to have a herbal garden made for his concubine, and I shouldn't know about it." Cassandra was speechless. Karen actually had that garden made from another room, after destroying it, too? In a few days? How did he even manage to have it done in such a short time? Anyway, just enjoy it, child. I'll have more herbs or plants and whatnot brought for you to play with. So stay a bit longer, So that was the emperor's aim? To have Karen and her stay longer after the festivities? As she didn't want to refuse him, Cassandra only bowed slightly. After that, the emperor went on to try and convince Karen and Cherian to have their mother attend the festivities, but both pretty much ignored his plea, leaving their father to deal with his stubborn concubine. As it appeared, Karine was still sulking over him keeping Karen, and wouldn't even come over, making the emperor actually visit her instead. Cassandra couldn't help but admire that woman a bit more every day. Meanwhile, her gaze went back to Phaedra. The princess was leaning over to chat with the fifth prince, whispering something to him with a forced smile. Cassandra was surprised by the closeness between them, and more worryingly, the couple of glances she had sent her way. What was that snake preparing this time? Cassandra was waiting for the banquet to come to an end, caressing Cray's head. The dragon had decided to take a nap while curled around Karen's throne, its hot breath warming up Cassandra's legs. The emperor was still discussing the New Year's celebrations, but Cassandra didn't listen to him much. Instead, her eyes were staring right at the woman who had put a snake in her bedroom. She had noticed how that concubine was avoiding looking their way. Actually, that woman's eyes only went from her Prince Vrihan, to the floor, or her fidgety hands. She knew. The more she thought about it, the more disgusted Cassandra was. That woman had put a snake in her bedroom, and hadn't cared what would happen from that. She obviously didn't know much about the snake's species or its venom, yet she had put Cassandra and her child at risk. Karen too was glaring at that woman, making her absolutely terrified. Cassandra could see her lips trembling and her eyes on the verge of tears from where she sat. It became worse when Cray started growling too. Despite its resting posture and Cassandra's caresses, the black dragon didn't look calm at all, its ruby eyes were glowing. It had started slowly, but as the glares at the concubine grew longer and longer, the dragon's growl increased along, to the point where no one could pretend to ignore it anymore. "Son, what is wrong with you today?" frowned the emperor. "Your dragon is deafening us." "Maybe he is unhappy with snakes attempting to hurt his progeny," coldly replied Karen. A cold silence spread in the room, as most people paled. The emperor stood up and threw his cup on the floor. "Who dares? Who dares to meddle with the imperial children? In my palace?" The young concubine was still looking down, on the verge of tears, shivering like crazy. Even her prince didn't spare her a glance, looking completely unaffected. Either he didn't know or was really good at acting ignorant, Cassandra couldn't say. As absolutely everyone in the hall remained silent despite the emperor's anger, Cherienne smirked. "Leave it be, father. Or do you think my brother won't punish those people accordingly? Who would make an attempt on the war god's child's life and make it out alive?" "Karen," yelled the emperor. "If you want to settle this alone, make it quick. I won't allow those snakes in the imperial palace." "Don't worry, father," hissed Karen. "I'll take care of the vermin as quickly and painfully as I can." The concubine was crying silently, her eyes desperately stuck on the ground, but no one around her spared her a glance. She kept trying to get Vrihan's attention, but the prince resolutely ignored her. As it seemed she couldn't stand it anymore, she suddenly stood up, trying to leave. Despite her attempt at slipping out discreetly, it was impossible not to notice someone leaving the room when no one else but the performers were moving. Cherienne reacted first, her whip lashing the air and the floor in acute sounds. It made everyone stop moving, and the concubine freeze. Everyone turned their eyes toward her, as she seemed unsure what to do, standing there with shaking limbs. Gently, Cassandra felt Karen switch positions with her. She was now sitting by herself on his throne, while the war god stood up, and went down the stairs, walking to the woman. Everyone around held their breath. Despite the 4 dragons present, the most terrifying being in the room was human, and walked as silently, and as inevitably as death, towards that woman. She gasped, taking one step back, her eyes expressing pure terror. I didn't, I just... The snake was not." She couldn't even breathe enough to talk. Even Cassandra's heartbeat was going crazy just from watching the scene, her hands on the throne's arms. In front of her, Cray was growling even more fiercely, arching its back and showing off its fangs, the black tail violently swinging in the air. The dragon wasn't moving away from her, however, as if there was some invisible leash between it and the throne or Cassandra. The third prince, however, was walking to the woman at a stable, scary pace. The woman was the very face of terror itself. She couldn't even cry or beg properly, yet, when he suddenly arrived a couple of steps from her, she gasped again, ugly crying. Was it you? His question was only 3 words, but it felt like a death sentence. The entire audience thought the woman would lie. She could deny it, pretend she had nothing to do with it. But with her trembling lips, she only glanced once in Vrihan's direction. He wasn't even looking at her. The utter pain that appeared on her face was heart-wrenching. After a long, painful silence, she slowly nodded. Whatever she was about to say, the prince wouldn't hear it. He grabbed her and, without an ounce of compassion, dragged her across the hall. The woman's cries and pleas were unbearable. Please. Please. No. I didn't mean to kill her. I didn't. I was just. Don't kill me, please. Please. I beg you. Your Highness. Save me. Please. I didn't know. I was just jealous. Please. Help me. Cassandra did her best not to react, but it was hard. The woman was begging both Karen and Vrihan to spare her, but neither listened. No matter how much she screamed, no one intervened as she was dragged to the black dragon, who was waiting for its prey with a terrible growl. As soon as she was within reach, and without an order from the war god, Cray jumped on the woman, killing her in a matter of seconds. The violent scene excited the other dragons, who all seemed to want to be part of it, growling and opening their maws. As Karen reunited with her, Cassandra tried to calm down. No matter how that woman had targeted her, she would never feel content over someone's death. Especially since it felt like that woman had been abandoned by all. The cold in her heart was warmed up as soon as Karen pulled her in his arms, again. What said the Emperor, astonished. Vrihan. Won't you watch your women better? The second prince immediately looked irritated. Cassandra couldn't help but feel he deserved that much. How could he act like it was unrelated to him? He clicked his tongue. Maybe my brother should keep his woman better, as well, father. If she stirs up jealousy around her. Didn't you forbid killing during dinner, father? Claimed Fitra right after him. How is it fine to let a dragon kill someone now? The emperor looked angry and was about to shout back, but Sherian was faster. Rejoice, sister. Didn't you ask for a sacrifice a few days ago? Don't hesitate, if you or brother Vrihan have more candidates. My brother's dragon is always hungry for deceitful snakes. Fitra looked as if Sherian's words had bitten her. All 4 dragons were still growling, but the most furious ones were Cray and the second prince's red dragon, Vihan. They kept growling at each other as if they were about to fight, and their masters were glaring at one another the exact same way. Enough, all of you, thundered the emperor. No more fighting and arguing and killing. I have had enough. Cassandra noted that despite his generalities, the emperor's words were mostly said to Vrihan and his sister, and he barely looked Karen's way. She turned to him, whispering. Why didn't you kill her yourself? Cassandra asked. The smell of blood makes you sick, he simply replied. Cassandra would have found it funny, in other circumstances. Cray eating a human being wasn't a much better sight. But indeed, it was a quick job. There wasn't any trace left of the poor woman. After what had happened, everyone else was only hoping no one felt murderous anymore, and the conversations were changed to the upcoming celebrations. Neither Cassandra nor Karen had much interest in those. Feitra and Vrihan remained silent throughout, too, though that didn't stop their murderous glares. Cassandra ignored them, focusing on her dinner, and chatting with Sherian. Karen, as usual, didn't talk much, but he was holding her by the waist all the time and caressing her skin, reminding her of his presence every second. "Can you really make Valeria talk?" she whispered. Sherian frowned, looking at her younger half-sister, hiding behind Feitra. "I can. If Feitra lets her live until I get my hands on her, that is. I'll get her right after the banquet, she won't be able to leave. And she is already terrified after brother's little show anyway. I'll just drag her to my apartments until the little swine speaks." On a side note, do you think you can learn more about the abortion potion? "I'll study it," said Cassandra. "The bottle and contents can give some information about whoever made it. But, that will give me another occasion to look for my sister." "How so?" "If it was me, if I had a hefty sum of money, my freedom, and no more people to work for, I would have tried to set up a way to earn more money. Miss Andra probably opened some sort of business somewhere. If she did, it has to be with something she knew well, and the only thing I can think of is our knowledge in herbs and plants. She could have learned something else in the meantime," argued Sherian. "Or she could work for any shop." Cassandra chuckled. "Maybe, but I don't see my sister taking orders if she had a choice." "You heard it too, she is as proud as ever. If she acquired as much as that bandit said, then I would bet she also saved some by herself. She would rather remain independent. I am not sure about the business, but medicine in the Dragon Empire is a lucrative business. With her knowledge, she could work it out." "But you said she was only 7 when she was sold." Cassandra looked around, a bit worried about talking of her childhood in the presence of those people, but with the performers' music and chatter, no one could hear them whisper. "The Rain Tribe children learn about plants and herbs before we even learn how to write. It is considered the most basic and necessary knowledge. Miss Andra and I used to follow our mother everywhere, and she was the tribe's doctor. We were the most knowledgeable." While she talked, both Sherian and Karen had the same odd feeling. They often forgot that Cassandra had been born and raised in another country, another culture. Her white skin should have been a constant reminder, yet she acted so discreet and quiet most of the time, her past was rarely brought up. "Fine," said Sherian. "I guess you'll have to look into the herbs businesses." "You want to go out again?" asked the prince, with an unhappy frown. Cassandra smiled at him and gently kissed him. "I'll be careful again, I promise." "With Sherian and Cray, too." The dragon immediately raised its head, putting its hot snout against Cassandra's thigh. "I'm curious to meet that mischievous sister of yours," admitted Sherian. "I do have a thing for troublemakers." The next morning, everyone in the palace was so busy with the preparations for the New Year's festival, Cassandra and her prince were woken up early by all the outside ruckus. The young concubine, still tired, rolled over to his side, and laid her head on his shoulder. Despite his closed eyes, she knew Karen was awake from his fingers gently stroking her hair. The previous night, Sherian had left early after grabbing Valeria and taking her to her apartments. Cassandra trusted her to get as much information as she could out of her younger half-sister, and had left with Karen to avoid more trouble. The tension was high between the brothers, and she didn't want to stay in Fitra's presence longer than necessary. That woman made her too upset. It was like being in the same room as a venomous, cunning snake. "Get up, sleepyheads!" suddenly yelled a voice inside the room. "Your Highness! You can't barge in like that!" Cassandra sighed from recognizing the voices. Karen sat up and glared at his sister, who was at the end of their bed, fists on her waist. "Come on, I want us to get out of here before the whole palace goes crazy." "It's barely dawn," sighed Cassandra, sitting up, too. She was glad she had slept in her nightgown. Karen, very unhappy about the unwanted morning call, was glaring at his sister with an annoyed face. She was good at ignoring him though, and sat on their bed. "I know, but we have to find what that potion is made of, who made it, and your younger sister. Plus, we have to be back early for tea with Mother before the beginning of the celebrations. And you don't want to be late for tea with my mother." Cassandra sighed. Indeed, Corinne had limited patience, but what Cherienne ignored was that she was most severe about her own daughter's lateness. Cassandra had never been late, but she could tell the imperial concubine would let it go a couple of times. "Dahlia, could I get some tea, please?" "Coming right away, my lady." The servant left the room, and much to Karen's annoyance, Cassandra got up and started getting ready. "What did you get from her?" he asked with a raspy voice. All three of them knew who he was talking about. Cherienne crossed her arms. Fitra ordered her to go get the potion, but she really didn't know who that snake was intending it for. But she said it was before Fitra knew you and Cassie were coming, so she probably really didn't intend to use it on you in the first place. "Then, the question is, who is pregnant?" said Cassandra, while grabbing a pink dress out of the closet. "Someone Fitra would want to lose their child. You would have been first on her list, I guess, but if it isn't you, it has to be one of our brother's concubines. What I don't understand is why she would care since no dragon egg seems to have appeared yet." While she was relieved it wasn't aimed at her, Cassandra was disgusted that Fitra would try to make someone lose their baby. Corinne had warned her many times about the greedy and jealous women of the palace, but she could never accept it. She put a hand on her own belly, which was growing a bit bigger each day. According to Corinne, she still had about 3 or 4 months to go before her son would be born. The dragon tamers always came to the world early, but they would be healthy nonetheless. As long as she could endure 1 more week in the palace, Cassandra could leave and have her son at the Diamond or Onyx Castle. Karen took her by surprise when he came from behind, putting his arms around her. "What are you worried about?" he asked. Cassandra shook her head, giving him a quick kiss. "It's nothing. I will go to my herb garden and then outside. I'll stay with Cherienne and Dahlia." He nodded, despite his usual frown. If it wasn't for his sister being with her, he wouldn't have let Cassandra anywhere he couldn't see her. Cassandra finished brushing her hair and picked some accessories with Dahlia's help, before kissing her prince goodbye. With Cherienne right behind her, she walked up to her herbal garden and took the potion from Dahlia's hands. The bottle was green, a bit more expensive than the usual apothecary goods. It had no other indication about any manufacturer, however. Dahlia and Cassandra spent some time studying the potion's content, during which Cherienne had to wait. The princess wasn't too good with patience, however, and started grumbling after only 20 minutes or so. "Aren't you done yet?" she growled. "Almost, actually. There's this scent I don't recognize," said Cassandra, frowning. "I don't smell anything else, my lady," admitted Dahlia with a sorry expression. To Cassandra, whose sense of smell was enhanced, there was definitely something else, but she couldn't point it out. Nothing had come out of analyzing the potion's thickness or color. However, whatever it was that she was smelling felt strangely familiar, something that went back to her farthest memories. Could it be petrichor? "What the heck is that?" "It's the smell of the rain," said Cassandra, still baffled. Cherienne exchanged a look with Dahlia, both a bit doubtful. "You're telling me rain has a smell?" "It's more like the smell of the earth after the rain, actually. But the soil's smell after the rain smells exactly like this. I just haven't smelled that in a long time." It wasn't surprising, considering how rare rainy days were in this country. The Dragon Empire's capital was hot, humid, and suffocating. Except for a short rain season, it was as arid as a desert most of the year. They had to go to further cities, like Karine's city or the Shadelands, to see something other than dry soil and sand. The capital relied mostly on the large wells and few rivers that came all the way down from the sea, but the water came from the earth or the sea, not from the sky. "That potion probably came from outside the capital," said Cassandra. "If they didn't make it in the capital, the only reason would be that they must have found a better price having it imported from the outside. Someone must have bought a larger stock. It actually makes sense. Valeria bought this potion in the Red District, where they probably use that kind of potion often, for the prostitutes. If Phaedra only asked her for an abortion potion, that child probably just went to the first place she thought of getting one. So this is a dead end," sighed Dahlia. Both women stayed silent for a while. Cassandra felt like they were missing something, but she couldn't say what. After a few minutes, her eyes fell once again on the green bottle, which she grabbed. "Not necessarily. Why would they have put this potion in a fancy container like this one?" "You're right," said Cherienne. "If it's from a large stock, the seller wouldn't bother putting it in a green jade container. It's like they knew who they were selling it to." "The order was placed beforehand," concluded Cassandra. "Valeria was made to retrieve the potion by Phaedra, but the seller knew it had been ordered from the palace." "So, the seller knew the buyer," said Cherienne with a grin. "Now, we just need to find them. I'll send one of my girls to see who sells those in the Red District." Once Cherienne was done giving orders, she and Cassandra agreed it was time they left the palace to look for Miss Andra in the upper neighborhood. There was no reason for them to go back to the Red District to investigate the potion, but Cassandra was adamant about looking for her younger sister as soon as possible. Cray was nowhere to be seen, for now, probably hunting somewhere far away from the current ruckus at the palace. As they left the palace, Cherienne couldn't help but think about their earlier talk over and over again. Cassandra had taken her by surprise. Though she knew about her brother's concubine's exceptional knowledge in medicine, she was shocked to hear her talk so well about the usual trading habits of the capital merchants. What kind of life had she lived, exactly? Common slaves didn't get that much knowledge just by some observation. Under her weak and quiet appearance, that woman actually turned out to be even smarter than most of the concubines. No wonder their mother had taken a liking to her. When they finally reached the neighborhood Cassandra had set out to target first, the young concubine was a bit lost. Where to start? This wasn't like the Red District, where everyone knew pretty much everything that happened next door. She tried to think of what to ask, and as soon as she found a shop, she walked straight up to the merchant. The old man was speechless upon seeing the three women that had appeared, but Cassandra was now used to this kind of reaction. "Excuse me, sir, could I ask you a few questions?" "Of course, Your Highness." "Anything, Your Highness," said the old man, immediately bowing as low as he could. "Please get up, sir." "You don't need to bow. I wondered if you had seen any new shops opening in the neighborhood recently? Like an apothecary, or perhaps for southern medicine?" "No, Your Highness, not that I know of." "Many merchants come and go, madam." Cassandra sighed, thanked the old man, and then left. Cherienne, with her arms crossed, looked bored already. "Why does it feel like this is going to take forever? This area is considerably larger than the Red District, and my sister doesn't want to be found by anyone, either. I can't even look for someone with her name. She probably found a new alias to hide from the thugs from yesterday." Cassandra was right. Targeting the middle-class businesses meant they would have to search in a zone that was at least 5 times bigger than the Red District. Moreover, she had no name to give this time and only a rough idea of her sister's possible whereabouts. They had left early, but after 4 hours of walking around and asking as many people as she could, nothing happened. Cassandra had asked dozens of people, without ever getting anything concrete. The few known apothecaries had been established for many years, and no matter how many times she asked, no one seemed to have seen anyone that fit the description Cassandra gave over and over again. After a while, Cassandra started to feel the fatigue, her feet and back were aching. She had been so adamant about looking for her sister, she had forgotten her pain until she couldn't anymore. Cherienne helped her sit in a chair of the closest tea shop, somewhere she could hide from the sun. Even for the first day of spring, it was too hot for Cassandra. She had spent terrible summers in the capital, with a hard time coping with the heat. She truly wasn't fit for extreme temperatures. "Go order us something," Cherienne said to Dahlia, who walked away after a bow. The place was crowded, but no one dared to even look at the two women. People were absolutely shocked and terrified at one glance of Cherienne's purple dress. After a few minutes, they were truly isolated, as all the nearby tables and chairs had discreetly scooted away from them. "I can't believe we haven't found anything yet," said Cassandra, disheartened. "I really thought that last apothecary might be hers." "Well, unless your sister turned into an 80-year-old granny, it wasn't. You still have 1 week in the capital, you'll be able to look for her until then." Cassandra truly hoped she would find Miss Andra before then. Dahlia returned with the 2 cups of tea, and they drank silently. Cassandra was touched that she had thought about ordering a verbena and lemon-flavored one for her, while Cherienne had a black tea. I'm thinking, maybe I guessed wrong. Maybe Miss Andra already fled the capital, or she went to the poorer side. Looking for someone inside the capital is like looking for a needle in a haystack. And like you said, your sister made enough enemies to not want to. Princess Sherian, asked Cassandra. But Sherian's face was quickly turning white, and she was obviously struggling to stay conscious. Her eyes were closing and her words didn't make any sense. She spilled her tea in a clumsy movement and, before Cassandra could react, fell on the ground like a dead weight. Sherian. Cassandra ran to the princess' side in utter panic. What was going on? Sherian had fallen off her chair like a lifeless doll. Her first move was to check her pulse and breathing, but in a matter of seconds, she realized the princess wasn't poisoned but drugged. Dahlia, she called. I checked both cups, my lady, I swear, replied the young woman, crying in shock. I swear I drank from both. The tea was fine. Cassandra believed Dahlia, but this didn't make any sense. She was completely fine while Sherian was passed out. She grabbed both cups, smelling them. Nothing smelled out of the ordinary, but it could have come from anywhere. Around them, people were in total panic after seeing an imperial family member pass out. No one wanted to be associated with a crime towards the imperial family, and the punishment that would come with it. Everyone around quickly fled the scene screaming, leaving the three women alone. Cassandra desperately tried shaking Sherian, calling her name and hoping to wake her up. Who had done this? Who would be crazy enough to attack the princess in the middle of the street? And so few people knew about their outing, too. She brought her fingers to her mouth and whistled loudly, out of despair. She hoped he wasn't too far, because she had no idea what to do. Come, suddenly said a voice, grabbing her wrist. Before she could protest or resist, Cassandra was dragged away from Sherian. Whoever was running in front of her held her wrist strongly, not letting go. Let me go, yelled Cassandra, despite the shock. However, her kidnapper didn't stop. She couldn't even see who it was, as they were covered in a dark hood and cloak. They ran across several streets, but Cassandra, with her round belly, was running out of breath. Stop! Stop! I can't! Whoever it was finally stopped, and took her inside a house. Cassandra was too busy catching her breath to look around, but she could tell it was the one of the most common kind of house for middle-class people, big enough for 1 or 2 people to live in. It was pretty dark, however, as the individual left the windows closed. It's really you, whispered the woman, still standing a few steps away from her. Who are? But before she could finish her sentence, Cassandra's eyes finally met the woman's eyes. There was no mistake possible, no matter how incredible it looked. She had such a strikingly similar face, the same emerald eyes, the same dark brown hair. She only looked a bit younger, and her lips were fuller, her cheeks chubbier. Am I Miss Andra? She stuttered. The young woman nodded slowly, looking like she was having a hard time believing her own eyes, too. You're really Cassandra, aren't you? I can't believe it. They were both in utter shock. Cassandra fell on the closest seat, her legs unable to support her a minute longer. She observed her younger sister from head to toe, shocked to have found her, but also shocked to see how alike they were, physically. Miss Andra had grown up to be a strikingly beautiful woman. Cassandra was pure beauty, but Miss Andra was a cultivated one. Every detail of her face looked perfect, as if it had come out of a painting. She had some light makeup on, almond-shaped eyes, and the bits of her skin visible didn't have a single scar, unlike her older sister, who had marks everywhere. She was indeed a bit curvier than Cassandra, too, showing that she had probably gotten better meals while growing up. Her hair was cut shorter, to her chest, and was a bit more voluminous and clear. She stepped a bit closer, looking at Cassandra as if she was seeing a ghost. "How did you? I saw you on the terrace of my shop, so I—" "That was your shop?" asked Cassandra, suddenly realizing what had happened. Of all places, they had picked her sister's shop. She had thought about an apothecary business but didn't think about a tea shop, although those were increasingly popular in that part of the capital, as tea was considered a fancy drink. Miss Andra nodded, taking off her hood. "Yes. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw you, with the royal, too, but I knew I had to move quickly. So I drugged your drinks and put the antidote in yours. It was easy to know which one. Apparently your tastes haven't changed at all." So that was why Dahlia hadn't felt anything. Like Cassandra, she had drunk both the drug and the antidote. Dahlia. Cassandra suddenly realized she had left her at the scene with Cherian. Well, at least the princess wouldn't be alone when she woke up. "What the heavens happened to you?" whispered Miss Andra, looking at her body and pink dress, detailing her sister from head to toe. "You're so thin. And are you really?" "Yeah, I'm a concubine, and pregnant." Her sister's face immediately seemed on the verge of tears, looking completely sorry for her. "No, no, Miss Andra, I am fine. I am really fine, this is not. If only I had found you sooner," she sobbed. "I swear, I looked everywhere for you as soon as I could leave the Red District. But when I finally found your last master, a few months ago, they said you had been taken to the Imperial Palace as a slave to be sacrificed. I really thought you were." "You thought I died?" sighed Cassandra. "No, I was saved unexpectedly. I was looking for you, too. But back then, the Red District was the one place I never went, and when I got there yesterday, they said you had left months ago." "Miss Andra, I am so sorry, you were sold to a brothel." Miss Andra shook her head, trying to wipe her tears. "No, it was probably nothing compared to you, big sister. To be taken as a concubine. I am so glad I took you out of there. Don't worry, I can give you some of my clothes, and we can leave the capital, they won't find us. I have enough money saved away. We can terminate the pregnancy, too, so they—" "What? Miss Andra, no!" Cassandra had screamed without thinking because she was shocked. She hadn't thought her sister would think she needed to be saved, let alone help her get rid of her child. She put her hands on her belly, immediately getting protective of her child. "No, no, Miss Andra, you don't understand. Big sister, I know what those red or pink dresses mean. You don't have to be afraid, I will help you. I know it must have been hard to live with those wretched Imperials, but now She was stepping closer to take Cassandra's hand, but the elder sister shook her head resolutely. Miss Andra, listen. I do not need to be saved. You need to listen to me. My prince loves me, he really takes care of me, and this is our baby, our loved baby. The woman I was with earlier, she's his sister, Princess Sherian. She's here to protect me, too. Actually, we should go back and check on her, Sherian might. No. Her sister grabbed her hand, shaking her head, looking completely panicked. No, no, you can't go back. I don't know what they told you, but the imperial family is cruel, Cassandra. How many other concubines does he have? Those women kill each other every day. And you can get killed anytime, too, as soon as he gets bored. Big sister, you don't want that life. We can. Before Miss Andra finished her sentence, a loud growl suddenly resonated from above, making them both jump. Cassandra immediately understood what was going on, but her sister's eyes were wide open in utter fear, looking at the roof. What is? That's my bodyguard, sighed Cassandra. The next second, the walls and floor shook strangely, and the roof over their heads was completely blown away in a big gust of wind. Wood and stone fell apart in all directions, small debris falling around them, and Cray's big head appeared above, growling loudly. Miss Andra screamed in pure terror and tried to run away, but Cassandra held her hand, preventing her from leaving and trying to have her calm down. Miss Andra, it's fine. It's fine. It will eat us. That beast will eat us. That dragon is a friend. I promise he won't hurt you, yelled Cassandra, desperately trying to cover the dragon's loud growls. Cray, hush. I'm fine, calm down, please. The dragon, apparently unhappy or confused, kept growling over their heads, its huge claws tearing some of the furniture around them. The red eyes were glowing in anger at Miss Andra, despite Cassandra's attempt to hide her behind herself. Right then, the door was blown away from the only wall left standing, and Sherian appeared looking furious, followed by Dahlia. What is going on? Sherian, are you fine? Asked Cassandra. Fine? I wake up in the middle of an empty street with you gone, and he making a mess of the place looking for you. What happened? Wait, don't tell me that's really your sister. The princess had finally realized the striking resemblance between Cassandra and the terrified young woman standing next to her. Miss Andra, after a few seconds of surprise, jumped in front of her sister, taking a little dagger out, glaring at Sherian and obviously getting ready to defend herself and Cassandra, despite her own fear. Cassandra sighed again, totally exhausted by the turn of events. Yes, it is. Sorry, she's the one who. I drugged you, how come you're already awake? Asked Miss Andra with a frown. Despite glaring at Sherian, she couldn't help but also try to keep an eye on the dragon too, wondering which would be the bigger threat. The princess rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. I have dragon's blood. You think your little sleeping potion can knock me out for so long? I only needed a few minutes for my blood to get rid of it. Don't do that again though, or I'm slicing your pretty little neck next time. And keep that toothpick away. With the way you are holding it, I can tell you'll only manage to injure yourself. Hein you, Li Yunjie, whispered Miss Andra. Yamenda Perrines de Linyu, replied Cassandra. Al Shenji Li. Miss Andra, Bado Kaikara. Kaikara? Hainu, Li Snara. Alra, Mai Li Hensen. Linyu, Bado, Almir. What was that? Sherian and Dahlia exchanged a look, completely baffled. They had never thought Cassandra could speak another language. Whatever they were speaking, the sisters' sounds were completely different from the Dragon Empire's language. They couldn't understand a single word they had said. Whatever those words they exchanged meant, Miss Andra was still sending doubtful glances at Sherian, refusing to leave her sister's side. Cassandra, though, was obviously trying to have her calm down. What was that? Asked Sherian, baffled. Al Shenyinui, Hainu. Li Gan. Miss Andra, it's all right. Please. I promise Sherian won't hurt me or you, replied Cassandra, switching back to the Dragon Empire's tongue. I still haven't decided on that, actually, said Sherian, clicking her tongue and glaring Miss Sandra's way. Apparently, she was still not over the drug incident. Cassandra sighed. Miss Andra, next to her, couldn't take her eyes off Cray. Upon Sherian's arrival, the dragon had finally stopped growling and was simply looking at them, its red eyes filled with curiosity, with one paw on the last wall that remained standing. The large nose was sniffing Cassandra, as if to check if everything was all right. She gently patted its snout. That be Black Dragon. That's the war god's. His name is Cray, said Cassandra. He's my friend, and sort of my bodyguard too, as you can see. He just destroyed my house. Yeah, he tends to do that when you kidnap his favorite toy, sneered Sherian. Kidnap? You're the ones who took my sister away. Snara. Sherian frowned, annoyed, and turned to Cassandra. Whatever she is calling me, I do hope that chick nose being your little sister doesn't give her an extra life, Cassandra. Miss Andra, please, calm down. We should go back to the palace, now. We have caused enough trouble. I don't want His Highness worrying about where I am, either. And we need to talk where we can both be safe, all right? I need you to trust me, just this once. Hainu, I don't want you going back there. For a second, she recognized the eyes of the little Miss Andra, the little sister she had been separated from many, many years ago. It was heartbreaking to see that scared expression of hers again. Despite everything, Cassandra understood her younger sister's concerns. She had survived all on her own until now. She was scared, just like Cassandra had been, before she had met and learned more about Karen. Moreover, the terrifying rumors about the imperial family that Miss Andra had probably heard were sadly true, for most of them. She took Miss Sandra's cheeks between her hands, trying to have her focus on her instead of the imperial princess or dragon. I promise it will be fine, she said in their native tongue. I just need you to trust your big sister this time, all right? We just found each other, Miss Andra, I am not risking losing you again. Come with me to the imperial palace, I'll explain everything. Are you sure? I am, Linyu. Now, come. As they arrived back at the imperial palace, the doors opened wide thanks to Sherry-Ann's purple outfit and Cassandra's pink dress, but her younger sister couldn't stop frowning and being wary of everyone they crossed paths with. She stuck right behind Cassandra, checking everything around them as if she was ready to hide, fight, or run away at any moment. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.